The thing that our viewers have requested the most is a studio tour. So let's go take a look inside, show you around. So this is the studio, which you've seen in lots of other videos, I'm sure, but let's take a little bit of a closer look. So the new studio is just under 8,000 square feet. We moved here about a year ago. We've got things kind of where we want them. The main floor is divided this way. We have paint, we have the main build floor, and then we have clean rooms and offices. The clean rooms are for the more technical stuff, although some of it happens all over the place. We can't really control that. My dominion is the paint room. So come on. These are 11 feet tall so that we can wheel a 10-foot wall in here without having to do anything funny with it. The entire ceiling is made of canvas that is stretched over frames so that that entire thing can be a filter intake. We can put in a, which we haven't done yet, but we'll have an exhaust fan that will draft air through that space. Paint has its own air reel, and this one is set on a separate regulator so that I can regulate this air from the same compressor without affecting the regular shop air. So we have that. The different types of sprayers we use are an airless, which is actually right here, our current iteration. This is probably the 10th one that we have bought. We destroy them over time. They have a limited life, and that's just something you accept. There's also a heater in here and regular blower fans. Right now it's dry, we don't need that many, so things go fairly quickly on their own. Of course, you have to have the fire cabinet for paint, so solvents and paints are stored in here. And a periscope because, well, you have to have a periscope. How do you see out the top if you don't have a periscope? Think about it.
Here is our CNC machine, which I'm sure you've seen in several of our other videos. It's a 4x4. We would like to upgrade to a full 4x8 so we can get a full sheet of material on there without having to do slide passes and potentially convert this guy into either a wet bed, still using the router, or better yet, a plasma cutter for doing metal. That's what I want to do. We'll see if that happens. At our old shop for years, I had to go run around to different switches to turn on the coolant and the vacuum pump, but now I have covered switches for that because I can. So those of you who have CNC machines, you have air-cooled and water-cooled. Air-cooled are generally cheaper, and my God, they are loud. You can't be anywhere in the building when that thing is running and hear anything, because it's just going wah really loudly. So we have the water-cooled spindle, which turns on the blue light to indicate that it's on, and also we have a big old bucket of water here that has a pump in there that pumps water through the spindle and then back out into here. All right, now to the tool room, corral, alcove. I don't really apologize, it generally stays a mess. This is just a little messier than usual. And a lot of these are some old storage and old benches that we are in the process of getting rid of and transferring everything over to nice new tool cabinet. This is the tool cabinet I have wanted for years, and a couple months ago, we actually built it. We have storage for all of our various nails, staples, screws, bolts, smaller tools. Everything is nice and labeled. Just got some more of these yellow bins in, so we're getting everything else out of the old little clear bins and into here where they can live. The doors, kind of fridge-style doors here with the shelving on them. I had to put 2 wheels under each one on that same tangent line as the hinge axis. Just had the first one, and after about 2 weeks, there was so much weight in screws and bolts and whatnot in these doors that it actually pulled the entire cabinet down and cracked up the leg pieces I had built under there. So I had to reinforce that and then add more wheels. So this maw back here is one of my next projects. This is deep storage area. There will, in the medium future, be a wall rack from that column over to that wall. All of our old walls will get stored, getting back into that, because right now this is just a big, very inefficient pile. More storage. This is the storage loft. Also, in theory, this is going to get better organized once we get shelving in here, but we've been distracted with paying work. This is where I keep all stuff like all of my EMT fittings, when I have to do electrical work, boxes of God knows what. Lots of boxes up here. We have bins labeled Victorian electroscience and atomic age science. Old machines that we have or find or use, those are just here in boxes to at some point get broken apart as greeblies or what have you. Let's go back downstairs.
We've got our outfeed table and 2 main build tables in the back. There are other build tables depending on what's going on, but as far as just a main build table, we've got those 2. Over there is the sheet goods storage, and you'll notice that it is on the feed side of the table saw. Back in the old shop, it didn't used to be that way. We'd have to literally walk stuff around the table saw to get to here so that we could use the table saw, which is a pain in the butt, and we shouldn't have done it that way. Over here is our old trusty chop saw table, which will be rebuilt. This thing's, it's 11 years old at this point, and it still works, but we can do better. We'll probably do this with a steel frame. That way we don't have to worry about expansion and contraction, things moving around, and also make a better tunable deck that will have jack screws, turnable knobs that you can literally move the entire thing, tune it so that it's all square and perfect and true and stuff like that. These cabinets came with us from the old shop. These have interior, basically all glue and filler. These are silicone mixing pads for mixing Bondo, super glue, epoxy, all that kind of stuff. This is Matt did all the wiring in this place, so we've got a separate panel over here that controls everything on this wall. We ran EMT across the ceiling to get it to that point. It has an alien warning sticker on it with googly eyes. Everything has googly eyes on it. Bandsaw, which this is the Ben Rush Memorial Bandsaw. We try not to use it. I'm not a fan of the bandsaw. I've never perfected it. I've never learned how to use it that well. And we have a CNC machine, so it just generally doesn't come up that much. Router table. This is one of our earlier purchases. It still works fine. This is our 1 3/4 horse router. Lumber storage. This is the same old rack from the old shop. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And of course we have pteranodons because pteranodons.
Going back downstairs, we have the Harry Potter closet under the stairs, which is where we keep all of our assistants with the spiders. This is molding and casting that Mark will show you in just a moment. So this is our design desks. This is for CAD and Illustrator. It's nice and accessible to everything else, so we can do our CAD models and then just reference them while we're working. Here we have electronics / my office. This is where Matt often lives. My old electronics bench has been transferred from the old original shop. As far as tools go, a couple things that are worth it. I've been through several really crappy cheap soldering irons, and they are cheap and crappy. Getting a good soldering iron is definitely worth it. We got the Hako, I don't know how to pronounce that. I think it was about $200, and compared to the little $20 jobs you can get from wherever, definitely worth it. Having a good exhaust fan is also definitely worth it with the filter there. So all that stuff is solder that is not in my lungs, and I like it there. My little Cthulhu guy here holds that. Clamp in a PCB, and then Cthulhu holds all your components while you solder them in. Very handy to have. My big mess of shelving here where I have works in progress, versions of our new control boards. We have bomb parts for when the FBI raids us. Generally all the stuff that's too large to store in these bins over here, where I have my smaller components, all of my resistors, Series 6 resistors, so everything from 10 ohms up to a mega ohm in nice even steps, capacitors, all the stuff that I need pretty regularly for all of that.
We've been doing a lot of molding and casting, so a lot of this stuff has come out here onto this bonus table. Anna has also been casting art dice, very cool crafty dice and stuff like that. She's got an Etsy page, so she's been doing that out here as well. Let's go into actual molding and casting and take a look. So we literally have tubs labeled miscellany in here for various things, the sculptural elements, stuff like that. We've got sculpting tools, filler, clay. I've got dry rice. If you want to figure out what your mold volume is, and you don't want to use water because you don't really want to introduce water, especially using resins and stuff like that, urethanes, they don't like water. So rather than having to fill it with water, dump it into a graduated cylinder, and then dry the mold for a long period of time, or even heat it up or whatever to make sure you've driven all the water out, using dry rice saves you all of that. Our vacuum tank is in here, and it's vacuum compressor, molding clay, sculpting tools, alcohol, solvents, roll cotton, and latex for fleshifying skeletons and doing other stuff. Our greebly dumping ground from our scrap mold. If you remember the scrap mold video, we've got release agents, gloves, pipettes for doing small molds, tongue depressors, stone, cornstarch, metallizers, scales for weighing everything. These are little Jello shot cups from the grocery store, but that's a small container. The larger containers, we have graduated containers, different types of deli containers. So once we've made one volumetric determination, we'll mark it on a master container, then just use these cheap containers. Instead of using these things, which are expensive or relatively expensive, we use these, which are pennies a piece. Save a bunch of money there. These little paper drinking cups that you get at the water cooler, we use these as little disposable funnels. You just clip the end off and stick it in there and pour your resin, and you're not pouring into a plastic funnel that you're going to destroy as soon as you pour resin into it. Little fun fact. This is a live cast of Matt's face that I did 3 years ago, and I just use him for practice sculpting whenever I'm doing prosthetic pieces and stuff like that. This toaster oven we use for driving water off things and also for softening clay. If we're sculpting or we're clay damming and stuff like that, it really helps to be able to just warm up the clay instead of having to do that with manual pressure. You just stick it in there at 120 degrees and let it go. We can actually melt it all the way down into a slurry form if we need to, and that comes in handy, especially for doing prosthetic sculpting. We can get it so it's like a thick liquid. Live casting supplies in here, so plaster bandages and alginate, which is the dentist's impression stuff that they use to take impressions of your teeth. Last but not least is pigments. Different pigments for silicone and for urethane resins. We can augment that with other pigments, dry pigments and stuff like that. So it's not just those pre-prepared pigment, that's a mouthful, but it is also dry pigment. We can buy red oxide and just add that. Generally we would do a test and make sure it's not going to have some sort of adverse reaction. We go in that direction when we need to.
This is kind of the third room that is under the stairs, our loft space that we built up here. This is bulk storage. I've actually just got more of these shelvings, so all of this can be more well organized. We have our slop sink because you need a slop sink. Our nice big air compressor that gets routed out to all of our other drops around the shop. We have our, from the compressor, it goes to our 2 different regulators here. Front regulator, we usually keep it about 90 PSI, and this feeds currently 3 main drops throughout the workshop. And then this one here lives at about 35 or 40 PSI, and that goes back to the paint room for doing gravity gun, cup gun. Recent thing we added here is this shunt. So if I flip this valve, it will connect these two. The lower pressure will then equal the larger pressure, so that we can use the 90 PSI over in the paint room to dust stuff off and clean things. With all of our pipes that go throughout the shop, there's between 3 and 5 gallons, which is a whole small compressor's worth of air just in the pipes. This here is our welding table. We don't use it very much, so it hasn't found a good home yet as far as where it really belongs in the shop, which is good because it's on wheels and we can move it around to wherever we actually need it. This is actually the first thing we ever welded after getting our welder. Ground, we got that. That's all coming out of this hole here. Got a built-in auxiliary outlet. I can plug this into wherever I need. And I've got power for the angle grinder or whatever else I need. When it's plugged in, this switch just controls the actual welder. If we rotate him around, like all, or I hope all welding tables, it's made of steel because conductivity. So we can lay that we're welding on here, just clip our grounding clamp onto the table, and now the table's basically hot, and we can weld away without needing necessarily to clip this directly to the workpiece. And if we rotate him this way, that's where the actual welder lives. All of our accessories, tools, welding gloves, welding mask lives in there. Keeps it all, maybe not dust free, but dust light. Also up here in the kitchen, we have all of our storage for our molding and casting chemicals. These are temperature sensitive, and the front of house is the only area that's actually fully air conditioned, climate controlled. In the summer, it doesn't get too bad in the main shop, but it'll still be 90 degrees up there, and that's just bad to store this stuff. We have a kitchen now with our panini press. And it's all lunchtime, so I'm gonna make use of this.